Mid-18th century. Considering the turbulent conditions in Europe, France and Austria both sought to make their alliance last forever. The French Dauphin Louis thus married Archduchess Marie Antoinette of Austria. May 1770, a carriage carrying the bride arrived in France. With the incredible crowd of people cheering at her arrival, Marie stared in awe. This was her first time in the country. The woman beside her reminded Marie that from this day forward, she'd be the Dauphine of France. The scenery and the people were hers now. Spotting a beautiful man clad in white on horseback, Marie asked Anne who he was, and Anne explains he's Oscar Francois de Jarget. Hearing him described as a beautiful lord, Anne laughs because Oscar is actually a woman, the youngest daughter of General Jarget, and though she was a woman, she was the captain of the royal guard. Stepping out of her carriage, Marie graced herself before King Louis XV and was picked up like she was weightless as he was enamored by her loveliness. He was sure she'd bring happiness to all of France, shaking her and laughing. He then pointed out his grandson and her new husband, Louis XVI, and Marie was surprised this boy was really him. The king suggested Louis greet his bride with a kiss, and despite him being a little shy at first, he did. Sitting in the carriage with the French royalty, Marie thought about how her heart didn't stir even one bit meeting her new husband. Youngest daughter of the famed Austrian Empress Maria Theresa was Marie Antoinette. Born into the Jargets family of nobles who served the French royals, Oscar Francois de Jarget was raised as a son to succeed her father. The place these two would live through such tempestuous times was here in Versailles, France. As the sun set, Andre and Oscar dueled, with Oscar coming out the victor like usual. Andre still had a long way before reaching her level. The two chatted about how the days finally come. When she was 11 years old, her father told her she would serve and protect Marie. She laid her eyes on her for the first time today and felt as if dignity flowed from within her, like Marie was truly born to be queen. Andre would be joining Oscar at the palace more regularly as her attendant, and he was more than ready for it. He'd always been by her side and vowed to always be. Inside, Oscar's father gave his daughter praise, while Andre received a scolding from his grandmother, who reminded him even though Oscar gave him preferential treatment, as a commoner, his role was to merely serve her. Waking up, Marie was dressed and prepared before walking around the palace. She made new friends while receiving the finest gifts of jewelry and played games she enjoyed. But not all was perfect, with her seeing her husband running away from her out of fear. And during an occasion, the woman beside King Louis embarrassed Marie, causing her to tear up and run out of the hall, where Oscar came to console her. 3 years had passed, and Marie wondered why her husband hadn't opened up to her yet. Oscar just assured her that His Highness was a discreet and quiet person. To this, Marie brought up a book she read that said a woman meets her soulmate, falls in love, and becomes his wife. She felt love was meant to suddenly fall from the sky like Icarus and burn in your heart like an irresistible storm. She was afraid she'd live out her days without that feeling. Oscar tried to assure Marie one day she'd be Queen of France, a role most women could only dream of, and that she had an important responsibility to protect Marie, remarking it was her highest honor to perform that duty. Marie was certainly charmed, saying if Oscar were a man, she surely would have fallen in love with her. That night, Oscar warned Marie and her friends that sneaking out to Paris this time of night was no good, but Marie begged her, so she gave in. They ventured out to a masquerade ball, where Marie danced, while Oscar watched with a stern eye. Marie accidentally bumped into a man, and with her mask having come off, their eyes glimmered as they stared at one another. But she then blushed and ran outside. The man followed, asking her for the next dance, and that's when Oscar appeared, telling the man to state his name. We learned he's Hans Axel von Fersen, a count from Sweden. But what the count wasn't expecting to hear is if he wanted to see Marie, he'd have to submit a formal request to the Palace of Versailles, because she was the Dauphine of France. While getting ready on another day though, Marie was alerted about a young Swedish count who wanted an audience with her. The two subtly smiled upon meeting once again, and it was like they were the only two in the room. And you make me smile when you like this video and subscribe to my channel, because here at My Shoujo Weekly, it's just you and me. You listening to my voice, or maybe you're just watching my videos with someone else. I don't really know. But what I do know is I'm covering all the popular stories in the shojo genre. So if you're looking for spicy romances and the hottest anime male characters, not counting myself of course, then this is the place for you. So come on, hit that subscribe and I'll be your guy. Marie screamed, getting taken away on her rapidly running horse. Oscar pursued right behind her, grabbing Marie as they both tumbled into the grass, lying unconscious. Andre was reprimanded by the king for hurting their Dauphine with the horse he brought from the stables, and thus was sentenced to death. Returning while injured, Oscar vouched for her dear attendant though, and as his master, she requested she be punished in his stead. The people gasped. Then, Hans interjected as well, assuring King Louis the entire incident was an accident he witnessed. He was prepared to die for what he believed was right as well. And finally, Marie ran in, pleading that she was the one at fault. She took blame for selfishly insisting on trying horseback and frightening the horse with her carelessness. She couldn't bear the thought of any of the three dying for her sake. And so, the king let it go. With the event coming to a peaceful end, Oscar suddenly passed out into Hans's arms. In her room, she was treated by her childhood nanny, Andre's mother. The mother tried to shoo them out, causing Hans to make a snarky comment about French men hiding their bodies from each other. However, he'd be met by a furious tossing of objects by her, only now learning Oscar was a woman. He'd felt Oscar seemed delicate and fragile, but remembering her showing her pride in taking responsibility, he believed she was truly remarkable. That aside, Andre stood before a window, vowing to give his life for Oscar, just like she had done for him today. April 1774. King Louis was suddenly ill with smallpox, and a month later, he was announced dead, and the people chanted, "Long live the new king, His Majesty Louis XVI." Starting today, Marie was Queen of France as well, and she and Louis cried over the loss of his grandfather. They weren't even 20 years old yet, but now they were thrust into reigning over the country. Louis XVI was crowned in front of everyone, and that night, the people celebrated gloriously, leaving the past behind them. As Major of the Royal Guard, Oscar was requested by Marie to stay by her side closer than ever. Oscar would now be paid twice as much as well. Hearing this though, Oscar requested keeping her normal salary, knowing France's finances were not healthy at this time. Otherwise, she'd refuse the appointment. Even so, Marie asked Oscar for what she desired, and Oscar's only answer was that she wanted Marie to be a splendid Queen of France. Nothing more. To this, Marie told Oscar to bring Andre with her next time along with Hans, so they could all have tea together. Oscar didn't seem so pleased by this. Later on duty, Oscar was congratulated on her promotion by her previous superior, Captain Victor de Girardel. Oscar sighed, remarking he'd be more suitable as major. Andre was surprised to hear he was being invited by the Queen for tea, but Oscar's grievance was over Marie's candid emotions. Marie did whatever she could for those she liked. She feared that candid nature would cost her one day, because all the money Marie spent came from taxing their people. Andre thought Oscar's fears were silly, citing the common people all adored their queen. But Oscar was still doubtful though, and couldn't rest until she learned one thing she needed to know. She later met with Hans, who was returning to Sweden soon in order to protect Marie's reputation. He realized Marie had taken a special liking towards and had been showing him too much kindness. Oscar understood. Since as Dauphine, Marie was relatively free to see who she wished and do as she wished. But now, things were different since she's become the Queen of France. Oscar agreed with Hans's decision and had actually intended to go to his house to advise him to leave. Since they were on the same page, there was no need to though. The two shook hands and Hans took his leave. Marie didn't take his leave well though. She wondered what was wrong with herself. She felt like there was a gaping hole in her heart. After Hans's departure, Marie surrounded herself with her favorites in the court and lived an extravagant life of luxury. Oscar begged Marie to stop gambling and granting her favorites land whenever they asked, but Marie didn't think much of it, simply responding she wanted to do whatever she could to help her friends. Over the next 3 years, the common people faced lives of poverty. Of course, Marie Antoinette's extravagance was not the sole cause, but she bore the brunt of people's resentment. The people couldn't even afford bread or milk, and all fingers pointed to their Austrian queen. 1778, 4 years later, Hans finally returned to the palace, having a private audience with Oscar. Exchanging pleasantries after all this time, Hans spoke of how well-renowned Oscar was, even in Sweden. They were tales of a female captain with fearsome skill. And yet, Oscar looked somewhat disheveled and nervous, asking how long he'd be here. And we learn Hans had returned to look for a wife under orders of his father. He needed to continue the family line and couldn't remain a bachelor forever. Staring out her bedroom window by herself, Oscar wondered why her heart ached thinking of Hans looking to marry. The next day, Marie was flustered and excited to see the Count after all these years. But with him telling her he was looking to marry, her face turned shocked. She wandered by herself, tears welling up in her eyes. She didn't know why she was acting this way over him. All the while, Hans uttered to himself he knew this was for the best, and he shouldn't pursue his feelings for her. His pursuit would be a betrayal to the King of France. All he could do now is look on from a great distance. However, the two would cross paths outside and make small talk. She congratulated him for his wife hunt and tried to walk away. But turning back and showing her tearful face, the two ran to hold each other, and now they were both weeping. They continued to spend their days together, and though Hans felt this was wrong, even if he were to lose his head right now, he would ultimately have no regrets. Marie felt the same, telling him in her whole life she never felt happiness like this before. And the two's lips met under the sunset atop the water. The palace was riddled with the gossip of their love. Many women spoke of how Her Majesty was shining more beautifully than ever because of Count von Fersen. The men were concerned, however, given this was a betrayal of their king and their country. Oscar brought this to Marie, reminding her she was supposed to be the mother of their nation, and that many of their citizenry viewed her extravagant living, while they suffered more and more harshly. If she didn't course correct soon, Marie's life may be in danger. Marie thanked Oscar for her concern, but didn't believe she understood. She recounted her time coming to this country to marry the Dauphin at only 14 years old. She had yet to experience first love, and was still a carefree child. By being their Dauphine, their queen, their mother of the nation, she had to forget that she was a woman by the name of Marie Antoinette. She had heart and emotions. She was still a woman who trembled with desire to love and be loved. In her eyes, King Louis XVI was a good man. She knew him to be tender, modest, studious, and she respected him with all her heart. But she cried, knowing that very feeling could never be called love. She believed the purpose of her youth was to meet Hans and love him. He was her first love, a feeling that suddenly fell from the sky like Icarus, and burned in her heart like an irresistible storm. She thought she would never experience it her entire life, but now she finally felt it. Oscar walked off stumbling in pain, now realizing that even as a woman herself, she couldn't understand Marie's loneliness and pain. She expressed her grievance with Andre, feeling she failed her duty to protect Marie, even though she'd been by her side the entire time. Meeting with Hans, he announced his decision to never get married. He only wanted to spend his life with one woman and love her entire being. He believed she was the only one who truly loved him, but knowing he could never marry her still hurt him deeply. Oscar thought of fate as cruel, but couldn't shake her own feelings. Arriving at the ball, dressed beautifully in white, no one even recognized her. She caught Hans's eyes, and he asked her for a dance, but by the end of it, she left, without anyone noticing who she was and what she desired within. The times grew intense, and great changes continued to come. Across the Atlantic Ocean, the people of the British colonies in America began a war with Britain to gain their independence. Seen also as an enemy, France supported the Americans, but the war weakened France's weak economy even further. Then, after a succession of natural disasters, France faced severe food shortages. 7 years later, 1785, the streets of France were bleak with depression and thievery. The commoners were always the biggest victims of tyranny. Andre sympathized with the people, knowing if his grandmother hadn't taken him in as a child, he might be in their position right now. Oscar gasped, but knew he was right. The nobles of Versailles, the king and their queen, knew nothing of the horrors on the streets of Paris. Their carriage was put at a sudden halt, and a woman told the noble to forgive the crying child. However, the man announced that trying to steal money from a duke's servant was outrageous. The people spoke of the boy jumping out to stop the carriage on purpose, and when the servant came out, he tried to pinch the servant's wallet. The blonde woman explained there was so little food, and the boy hadn't eaten in a while, and tried to garner sympathy from the man, suggesting this was just a passing impulse. Despite this, the man pulled out his gun, explaining the boy needed to be punished. Oscar tried to put a stop to this, and then suddenly, a civilian threw a rock at the nobleman. They couldn't take this anymore, asking what kind of human would point a gun at a child. Oscar tried to stop the people from mobbing, But to them, even if she tried to protect the child, a noble was a noble. Oscar and Andre held them off, and the man got away, much to Oscar's displeasure. So now, she and Andre had a deal with the angry commoners. One of the commoners came out to deliver a direct face blow, and seeing it, Andre took the attack directly in the eye. The man who struck wasn't done until the local newspaper reporter, Bernard Chatelet, called out, telling the people if they killed the nobles, they'd be no different from that cowardly duke that ran away. The people got behind him, and the assailants ran off. He then handed a paper to Oscar before leaving. Getting Andre bandaged, the doctor informed them he may lose his sight in his bloodied eye. Oscar was remorseful, knowing he got hurt because of her, but he just smiled, responding he'd gladly give an eye for her anytime. She walked out of the room, continuing to cry. She never knew the extent of the commoner's anger. She wanted to know more. She needed to know more about the people's plight. She then read the paper that Bernard gave her that spoke of Jean-Jacques Rousseau's book, The Social Contract, where a particular line resonated, man being born free, but being enchained everywhere. Marie was surprised Oscar was requesting to resign from the Royal Guard. She was asking to be transferred to the French Guards regiment. Victor appeared, wondering what her reasoning was, and she explained she was here to protect their country. If over 80% of the population couldn't live in peace, France wouldn't have a future. She believed by protecting the commoners, they could protect the nation and the royal family by extension. Andre, meanwhile, was summoned by Oscar's father, who told him to enlist in the French Guard to follow Oscar around. Her father didn't approve of her decision to leave the Royal Guard, and so, Andre happily accepted. He and Oscar chatted while making their way together, and he'd gotten used to seeing things with one eye. Oscar stopped, letting him know she's brought him nothing but trouble with her selfish ways. But he didn't mind, vowing to always be with her, French Guards or anywhere. The colonel called out to her, reporting that with her as the new captain of the French Guard, she was to attend to her unit on the parade ground. However, she was stunned seeing the grounds completely empty. The colonel assured her they were all lined up correctly just a moment ago, but they were instead clowning around in the mess hall, laughing over the idea of having a nobleman's daughter as their captain. When she entered to ask what was going on, they loudly objected to a woman being their captain, telling her that as the French Guard, they weren't just for show like the Royal Guard. She wasn't going to back down though, challenging any of them to prove themselves in a contest of strength against her. So, Elaine, one of the main opposers, took her up, where if she won, they'd have to take part in her training. The two had their duel, finding themselves somewhat exhausted at an even match. Elaine started to gain advantage due to his superior strength and stamina, but Oscar found her opening, disarming and taking Elaine's weapon, then pinning the two swords beside his neck. Bandaging Elaine up, she commended his skill, but he just scoffed at her and walked off. While Louis and Marie were on a walk with their 3 children, the king told her to go ahead because he wanted to finish reading a letter that arrived earlier. But setting aside to read it, he was stunned by its contents. Marie came by to let him know their children were getting restless, but she found Louis weeping non-stop. Turning over the paper he was holding, Marie was horrified. It read, "Your Majesty the King, for over 10 years, the Queen has been romantically involved with Count von Fersen. They enjoyed regular trysts and maintained an intimate relationship. I dare say, Prince Louis Charles may be Count von Fersen's son." Marie dropped it, begging for forgiveness as she admitted her love for Hans, but she assured Louis their relationship was never as close as this letter claimed, and that Louis Charles was indeed Louis' son. He believed her, and said that when he first met Marie, he thought she was so lovely, shining like the goddess of love had blessed her from head to toe. His eyes were utterly dazzled then. She always smiled so radiantly. She was bright, merry, and playful. On the other hand, he felt he was fat and not blessed with good looks, nor could he dance or offer witty conversation. But she married him, and he was happy to have been given a princess and 2 princes. He understood she was seeking happiness as a woman, and didn't hold that against her. In 1788, France's financial situation worsened further, bringing the royal family to the brink of bankruptcy. Poor people of the provinces poured onto the streets of Paris. The capital was soon beyond hope, with rioting and looting breaking out all over. Oscar came home one night to see her father had a guest over. She was shocked to hear her father wanted her to get married, and that the man he wanted her to marry was in fact Victor de Girardel, and that he'd feel at ease with Victor inheriting the Jargets family line, hopefully producing a strong, clever son between the two. Victor tried to kiss her hand, but she pulled away. He spoke sweet words, telling her from the very moment he first met her in the royal guard, he longed for her. He's seen her as a woman since the beginning. Hearing this, she was getting caught in his charms. But she quickly came to her senses, telling him she wouldn't be getting married. That night, she reflected on her father's desire to have her live a woman's life now. She wondered what the point was of her life up until now. In front of Hans, she was only permitted to exist as a man. She wondered what that was for. She always loved her country and stuck to the path she believed in. All the while, Andre sulked a bit over the feelings he'd been holding in for her the entire time. He thought he could hide these feelings until they were separated by death. But now that her father was looking to have her married, he might not be able to stay by her side anymore. He glanced up, noticing his vision in his only good eye was going blurry. But the blurriness went away. He then picked up his book, The New Heloise. It was a love story about an aristocrat's daughter and a young commoner. With their difference in status, they can only be together in death. He repeated the words in death again to himself, and later went to Oscar's room with drinks, but was surprised to find her crying. She laughed it off, telling him she didn't understand why she couldn't stop the tears from flowing lately. Andre gave a distraught look, seeing she had just put down a copy of The New Heloise as well. When she had read it in the past, she didn't think it was any good, but now she wondered what changed. As the two held their wines, Oscar reminisced on their old times together. The first time he had come to her home because his grandmother had taken him in. The first time they practiced sword fighting together. The day she was picked to serve Marie Antoinette as a Royal Guard officer. Though she hadn't finished military school, she remembered Andre being the closest to her throughout it all. Becoming more and more horrified as she went for her drink, Oscar pushed her down to stop her, and now he was on top of her, panting heavily. He then apologized and started picking up the glass. He hated himself. Back then, he swore he'd sacrifice his own life for her one day, and yet he tried to kill her. On another day, Oscar was alerted about her unit having sold all their weapons because of Elaine. They were going to be punished by General Bouya for treason against the nation. Oscar tried to vouch for them, not believing they would do that. But Elaine and the troops called her naive in response. One of them pointed out that because he sold his weapons, his mother could eat hot meals for a week. Another paid for a doctor to see his father. Another bought his little brother his first ever pair of shoes. And this guy wept knowing broken glass wouldn't cut his brother's feet anymore. None of the soldiers cared about being jailed at this point. Oscar had no idea things had gotten this bad. She tried to plead with the general to spare them punishment, but he simply commanded they spend a week in the detention barracks before taking off. Elaine and the rest laughed it off, and to this, Oscar began slapping several of them in the face. She told them punishment was easy. She already had that authority, but new punishment couldn't control their hearts. She apologized for hitting them, and admitted not knowing of their family struggles. The soldiers gasped, hearing she'd resigned from the French Guard, like they'd been wanting. But as she began her leave, all of her unit began running to stop her, telling her they'd go serve their punishment without objection, not because they were being forced, but because they wanted to. That night, taking another wine from Andre, Oscar told him she still wanted him by her side, despite knowing he tried to kill her. She later spoke with Victor, letting him know that there was someone so important to her who wouldn't be able to live if she were to marry. He immediately knew it was Andre and asked if she loved him. She gasped in response. She didn't know and had never thought of him that way. She initially thought of her and him as brothers, but maybe never realized their souls grew closer and closer together. That was all Victor needed to hear. He kissed her hand, letting her know that as a man who loved her, he was withdrawing his proposal. Oscar then went to see her father, thanking him for the life he provided her, but now she wanted to walk her own path. In an attempt to rescue the collapsing economy, the government planned to raise commoners' taxes further still. Inevitably, there was intense backlash. Louis XVI had no choice but to summon representatives of the clergy, the nobility, and the commoners for an assembly known as the Estates General. Though they faced great difficulty, the commoner delegates were undaunted, giving morale to the people that their future would still be bright. Marie, however, told Oscar to return to the Royal Guard, thinking Oscar wouldn't be safe in her current station. Marie felt the commoners had been agitated by the vulgar and barbaric commoner delegates, and that the troops were going to subdue them soon. In response, Oscar respectfully reminded Marie that their armed forces existed to protect the citizenry, and didn't believe they should point their guns at the people. Marie laughed condescendingly hearing this, replying that the power of the king was mandated by God, and said only His Majesty could lead the nation of France. She believed the country would not survive if they accepted the views of commoners. Oscar could see Marie's unwavering pride and self-confidence. Somebody born to be queen could not live any other way, which was precisely why Oscar wouldn't return to the French Guard. And this was their farewell. July 10th, 1789. Many regiments had come to Paris from all over France. Bernard spoke to the people about the king issuing a direct challenge to them with the gathered troops. He told the citizens to take up their arms, because man was born to be free. They needed to end this regimen and cut off the binding chains held over them by the monarchy. They chanted, "Vive la France," calling for liberty, equality, and fraternity. Oscar's unit was not happy having to point their arms at the people. However, Oscar assured them they'd simply mobilize, not attack. Even though she was a noble, she didn't agree with what the nobility was doing. So, she would indeed stand with her soldiers. Their morality was raised, knowing their captain would be with them. Sitting with Andre at the sunset, she asked him not to go with her. He refused, however, wanting to stay by her side as her shadow. She then accepted, telling him it was fine, and requested he stay close to her the entire mission, and laid resting on his shoulder. But she had no idea his vision was still going bad. He didn't want to let her know. He couldn't tell anyone. During dinner time, Oscar's father let her know the reason he wanted her to marry was to protect her from an oncoming storm like the one approaching. But he accepted her wanting to choose her path and do what her passion demanded. Oscar was strong in heart, but still worried for her safety. Her mother prayed for her to return alive. Bringing in her wine, Oscar told Andre she wanted to be his wife for the night. Andre then held her close, and the two embraced, making love in a way that was ethereal. The two became one, professing their love to each other, a truly genuine love, with tears in both of their eyes. July 13th, 1789. Commotion broke out after starving members of the public threw stones at the Royal Allemand regiment, and thus, the troops opened fire on civilians. Learning of this, Oscar spoke passionately that every person from every fingertip to every strand of hair was equal under God and must be free. She tore off her badge, renouncing her title and all the land in her possession, asking her unit if they'd be a mere tool of nobility or join the masses in supporting their movement. Her men decided to rally with the people, and charging towards the Tuileries garden, she told Andre to prepare for their wedding once the battle was over. Even with his vision fading, he could still see his beloved shining brightly. Oscar was at peace, bidding farewell to all the old constraints and the days she used to love. She sent her men to attack the royal regiment, and the commoners were overjoyed to see the French guard was on the side of the people. Hearing what was transpiring, the king and queen couldn't believe what Oscar was doing. She led a powerful advance, taking down the dogs of the nobility. The commoners were rallying and overwhelming the royal guard. One of her unit members got shot down, and as she approached him, Andre took a bullet to protect her, receiving a fatal-looking wound. Her unit retaliated, pushing the royal guard back, while she and Elaine tried to get Andre to safety. Setting him down, Andre felt her face out, touching her nose and lips. It was now that she realized he'd come to the battlefield completely blind, and she cried, calling him a fool, wishing he had told her sooner. Going in towards his face, she still radiated in his mind. Her blue eyes were like those of a Pegasus, and like its heart-stirring wings, her blonde hair waved like the wind. She wept, begging him not to leave her all alone, but he was gone. The cannons at the Bastille fortress were all pointing out towards the streets of Paris, and with anger raging in their hearts, the citizens were closing in on it. Oscar rallied with her units, giving a nod for Andre to follow them into battle. She asked for a moment of silence, crying as she honored her best friend and beloved. Then, she steeled her heart, drawing her blade as she commanded her men to attack the fortress. From atop the Bastille, the royal guard fired onto the people relentlessly. Their commander was cocky, calling the citizens nothing more than a rowdy mob, before commanding the cannon fire. But the people's panic began to calm, then turned to excitement as Oscar's unit came with cannons of their own. They fired back, hitting the top directly, adding rifle fire from below. Oscar then commanded the citizens to set the straw-filled carts on fire, attacking the drawbridge under a cover of smoke. Seeing her giving the commands, the general commanded his men to aim for her, and shot her over and over before Elaine could come to her side. Nearing her end, she told her men to keep going, and being carried by Elaine, she spoke to Andre, tears dripping down her face as she readied to join him. With the people breaking into the Bastille, Oscar spoke on her dying breath that she lived without even a moment of regret. Elaine then saw the white flag raised above the fortress, and Oscar was able to see the happy people cheering their victory for her beloved France. Liberty, equality, and fraternity. She wished these were the ideals forever remain cornerstones for humanity, uttering the words, "Vive la France," before heading to the next life, smiling at the end of it all. It was on this day, Bastille fell, marking a new chapter in history. August 26, 1789, the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen was written, declaring freedom and equality of all people. October 5th, 1789, the October March happened. Angered by food shortages, Parisian women marched on Versailles. Then, on October 6th, the royal family left Versailles forever and made their way to the Tuileries Palace in Paris. On June 20th, 1792, was known as the Flight to Varennes. Aided by Hans von Fersen, was the royal family's attempt to flee the country. August 13th, 1792, royal authority was rescinded and the royal family was imprisoned in the Tour du Temple. September 21st, 1792, Louis XVI abdicated and France was declared a republic. Then, January 21st, 1793, he was executed. August 1st that year, Marie Antoinette was separated from her children and moved to the Conciergerie prison and executed on October 16th. June 20th, 1810, Hans was killed by a mob in Sweden, but true to his promise to Marie, he never married. The French Revolution, beginning with the fall of the Bastille on July 14th, 1789, led to the Reign of Terror, which ended after Napoleon's coup d'etat on November 9th, 1799. Those roses lived through tempestuous times, resolutely pursuing their own will, and continued to bloom beautifully with vibrancy and dignity. Their color never faded, bathed in warm light. Ha ha ha! Good for the people of France, I guess. I think looking back, the way the commoners responded to the monarchy made a lot of sense. But of course, being born into royalty and nobility, it was probably difficult to have the foresight to see how this would play out. I think at least how this movie describes them. A lot of the hubris seemed born from upbringing and societal norms of the time. The clearest example of this was the relationship between Marie and Hans. At first, I really didn't like or agree with it, especially since she had children with Louis XVI. I was angered even. I really hate cheaters. But then thinking about it more, I realized Marie didn't choose her husband and she never loved him to begin with. Their marriage was just a consequence of two nations forcing two people to be together. Not saying what she did with Hans was right, but I'm at least a bit more sympathetic to her knowing this. But anyways, subscribe for more content. For now though, watch this next video. It's me, ComfyTea. I'll see you all in the next one.